I used to be obsessed with the fundamentals, trying to get my guard tight, my punches crisp, and have everything return to my stance without ever compromising my balance. And guess what? I sucked at striking. It took me an embarrassingly long time to realize it, but fundamentals don't matter. Now, what does that mean? Am I saying that only fancy advanced moves matter and you can only win fights with high-level techniques and concepts? No. What I'm saying is that the things we think of as fundamental are actually barely relevant technical details. When people first take a boxing lesson, they're taught to have their hands directly in front of their face, their chin tucked, and their shoulders rolled forward. Then they're taught to punch by rotating the hips, rotating the shoulders, rotating the elbow, extending the punch, and then bringing everything right back to its starting position. Absolutely none of that matters. If you need evidence of that, look at nearly every world-class fighter. They're all terrible at it. There are people in my gym with form just as good as world champions, and they still suck. This leads us to the inevitable conclusion that technique is not what makes someone a good fighter. It doesn't hurt, but it's not the key ingredient. What matters in a fight is two things: positioning and strategy. I'll explain both of these concepts and then explain why an obsessive focus on technique can actually make you worse. To understand positioning, let's look at a quick thought experiment. If I'm standing in front of a fully prepared opponent and throw a wide, sloppy punch, he's gonna block it. If I throw a tight, well-structured punch, he's also gonna block it. Now let's assume that I get completely behind my opponent. Now I can throw whatever I want. His hands can't catch it, his arms can't block it, and his eyes can't even see when it's coming. Not only that, but I'm also much safer from counters than if he were facing me. It's easy to see why good positioning is way more important than any little nitpicky technical detail about form. Now, why does this matter? Everyone knows footwork is important. You don't need some guy on YouTube telling you that. Well, everyone says footwork is important, but most gyms teach it like some sort of advanced technique that you have to earn the right to learn. What do I mean by that? Well, how do most striking classes do their drills? They stand in front of each other and go 1, 2, 3, 6. 1, 2, 3, 6. What's wrong with that? We're just standing in front of each other. There's no footwork. No one's fighting for position. Sometimes the instructor will have you do the drill while moving around a little, but that's not the same as learning positioning. Standing directly in front of someone while throwing combinations is why Cody Garbrandt has brain damage. People need to be practicing positioning first and foremost. You need to be Z-stepping, L-stepping, drop-stepping, shift-stepping, Dempsey rolling, D'Amato shifting, or anything that gets you better positioning. The nitpicky details about thumb at an 87-degree angle, shoulder even with your first maxillary molder aren't the main dish. They're not even the cherry on top. They're the sprinkles. Sure, they're nice to have, but when they're the first thing you learn, you just have a bowl of sprinkles. That's not dessert, that's rainbow-colored nonsense. Positioning, footwork, angles, and distance. That's what you should be practicing in the gym. Upper body technical details should be a distant second. The next thing that matters in a fight is strategy. If I take down a world champion submission grappler, it doesn't matter how perfect my takedown is or how precise I make my positioning. The bottom line is that I'm stupid. You need a strategy, a simple step-by-step guide on how you plan to win. Technique, positioning, experience, and expertise are all a complete waste of time if you have a garbage strategy. For example, I once had an MMA coach who was a very good wrestler but had a glass chin. Now, anyone with 2 brain cells can probably deduce that his plan should have been to take people down immediately. However, he refused to do anything but stand and bang. He lost literally every fight. Now, is the solution to this to work on his technical boxing skills and improve his punching form? Or is the solution to ignore boxing and say, "Wrestle, you idiot"? Hint, hint, it's the second one. As another example, look at Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 2. In the first fight, Fury fought technically, which resulted in a relatively close fight. In their second fight, Fury abandoned all semblance of technique in order to create pressure and force Wilder backwards. As a result, Fury dominated the bout. And this is because forcing Wilder backwards turned out to be a very good strategy. When Fury had to make a choice between having good technique and using a good strategy, he picked the strategy, and he was absolutely right to do so. Strategies decide fights. Techniques just get you compliments from nerds. Good technique won't save a losing strategy, and bad technique also won't doom a good strategy. But sacrificing your strategy for the sake of technique is atrociously stupid. Technique and form are nice to have, but it comes secondary to pretty much everything else. At this point, you probably understand why an over-reliance on technique can cause you to ignore positioning and compromise strategy. However, there's one other variable that makes an obsession with technique counterproductive, and that's style. A lot of people like to pretend there's one way to throw a jab, one type of guard, etc. Not only do these people exist, but I've been unfortunate enough to take their classes. But they're all very wrong. For example, many high-level fighters fight with their hands completely down, which is not a way any beginner boxing student is ever taught to fight. However, this isn't because the high-level fighters are just good enough to get away with it. It's because putting their hands down literally makes them better. It gives them a better view of their opponent, faster head movement, and allows their punches to come from unusual angles. Obviously, it makes it much harder to block, but that's a trade-off that certain fighters should make based on their underlying talents and abilities. Because fighters can have completely different styles from each other, focusing on one true technique hobbles everyone that doesn't fit perfectly into your arbitrary box. You can't actually teach someone the correct way to throw a cross because there is no correct way to throw a cross. There's a standard cross, a Lewis cross, a straight right hand, as well as swatting, vertical, and Superman variations on all of those, and that's not anywhere near an exhaustive list. Which variation a fighter should use depends on their body type, personality, style, and strategy, and their variation might even have to change from one fight to the next. Doing everything by the book is a great way to only ever be a mediocre fighter. What we think of as fundamentals are often highly limiting, amateur-level tactics that are only popular because they're exceptionally easy to teach. The basics are easy to explain, and technique just gives coaches something they can always correct you on. Actual fundamentals involve positioning, strategy, and developing your own unique style based on your body type, personality, and instincts. All of these concepts are designed around exaggerating your own strengths and exploiting your opponent's weaknesses. And that's hard to teach because it's different for every person and requires critical thinking to uncover. Coaches inundate students with how to do a move and rarely touch on when and why to do a move. The when and why are the real fundamentals of striking. Nobody cares what angle your thumb is at.
Look at this kid, he's an idiot. I bet that he can't even fight. 'Cause my Krav Maga skills could totally kill. Only my school does martial arts right.